You're listening to Barbell Logic,
the podcast where we talk about what it means to experience strength
and how you can use simple, hard, and effective strategies in training and nutrition to improve your life.
It starts with meeting you where you are right now and finding lasting solutions.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to another episode of the Barbell Logic podcast. I am your host, Andrew Jackson, taking over from the illustrious Nikki Sims after some technical difficulties trying to record with a wonderful guest who I have with us again, Jordan Stanton. Welcome.
Hello, thank you.
Jordan Stanton and I are both strength and nutrition coaches at Barbell Logic Online Coaching. As well, Jordan is the owner of Next Level Barbell and the Strength Union, both located in Portland, Oregon, correct?
That's correct.
Although technically, I think Next Level is in Milwaukee. Is that right? Or
That's correct. It's in Milwaukee, so just a little bit south of Portland.
Awesome. So we had Jordan on last week, recorded probably the best podcast ever, and then the internet ate it. So Jordan and I are back without Nikki because we believe it was her computer demons that ate the file. So we're going to try this again. So we invited Jordan on because we're really excited about the upcoming International Barbell Federation meet that is scheduled for October. And Jordan is helping us organize and run the meet because we've just now started running these meets under the umbrella of Barbell Logic Online Coaching, whereas Jordan has years of experience running meets. Both of us ran meets with the USSF in the past, but that organization has shut down. So we recruited Jordan to help us get the International Barbell Federation up and running a very similar format, although we've made some tweaks, which we'll talk about. But we wanted to have Jordan come on because Jordan has a ton of passion around competition. Actually, we go way back to October of 2015 when we first met at a competition. I was running my first USSF meet, and Jordan showed up along with Aaron Stanton and absolutely destroyed the competition, in particular Aaron, but Jordan also threw up some crazy numbers. Went on to then also compete in the USPA and then take over the USSF. And so wanted to have Jordan on so he could talk to us about lifting competitively, running meets, why it's so important, how integral competition has been in building a community, both in person and online. So Jordan, thank you again for coming back round two. And I'll just start off with asking how you got started with competing. Like, how did it become such a big part of your life?
I really had never heard of powerlifting or that there was such a thing as competing in picking up heavy things. But me and Aaron were training together, and we really just a couple months in, people would come to her and ask her, like, hey, do you own world records? Like, where do you compete? You know, why don't you compete, essentially? And we're both like, compete in what? Picking up things? And they're like, yeah, have you never heard of powerlifting before? Like, no, we have not. But like, we've never seen anybody lift as much weight as she has. So we had to go see, like, okay, well, what is this powerlifting thing? And kind of got Aaron into a powerlifting gym, which I joined later. And she went on to take multiple world records, win the world championship for USPA, absolutely crushed that competition you're talking about as well. And I competed alongside her with some respectable numbers, but maybe not to the same absurdity that she achieved.
What are your lifetime best competition totals?
My best competition total, I believe, is 1830.
What were the individual lifts for those?
Oh, gosh. They're in kilos, but
make you do math.
Yeah, roughly in pounds. Roughly in pounds, it was 700 squat, 700 deadlift, and 475 bench. I don't think that quite adds up to the right total, but there's some kilos in there, some rounding, and it's somewhere in that ballpark.
Pretty solid numbers in your own right, for sure.
Not too bad for a 242.
Yeah. And you guys got the competitive bug as lifters. How did that influence your training as a lifter? What did you notice when you started competing or after you went to that first competition and then you went back to the gym the next week? Did you notice anything change?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it changed even on the way into the meet, right? Like there's something on the calendar now that's, oh, well, we better be ready to perform. And that whole period of time leading up to a meet, from the moment we signed up for it to when we competed, our training was just so much more focused and more fun, really. And there was just this like air of seriousness about it, but also fun. Like, let's go, let's give our best, and then we get to display it at this competition. And then post competition, I find that watching other people pick up inhuman amounts of weights can also be quite inspiring for the next time that you're looking to get back into it. So I just say it really focused my training, and can be inspirational in accomplishing more than I would have without it.
How long was it before you, or like between when you started lifting and when you put your toe into actually being a coach and running a gym out of your garage? The garage gym, Stanton Strength was what it was called, right? Initially.
Yep, Stanton Strength initially. And that timeline, it's getting further and further away these days. But I'd say the lifting to competition, Erin's didn't take long. It was only a few months if she competed the first time. It took about a year. We lifted for, I'd say, 3 or 4 years before we opened up Stanton Strength in a little 240 square foot garage gym, which ultimately we very much grew out of and ended up opening Next Level Barbell.
Some of the most fun competition videos I've ever seen, I think, were in that garage. And you developed a very unique competition in its own right, which I think is really cool. So curious if you could talk a little bit about how you even come up with that idea, how it was born into existence, and what you noticed that it did to your gym community.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the King of the Hill. It's one of my favorite creations, having gone into the gym and training business. It really was born from a necessity. Having competed and seeing the benefits of competing for me, I wanted to share that with the people that I was training and the people that I was coaching. But sometimes in-person meets can feel very formal, and for some people a little frightening to be in that environment. Although, you often find they're more welcoming than you might think, but there's a barrier of entry there.
Yeah.
So I wanted to reduce that as one piece and just sort of expose others to what it's like to lift heavy with other people. And at the same time, the physical challenges of a 240 square foot garage meant that it's going to be complicated to get everybody warmed up and through a bunch of lifts. And so I created a rule set that moved really fast, really efficient, and ended up being an absolute blast to run. So it came out of necessity more than anything else. And to this day, we still run these at least twice a year with a very similar rule set with just some little bit of additions here and there, but makes for a really fun day at the gym.
How does that old saying go? Necessity is the mother of all invention. Something like that.
Yep.
Like constraints. I think the constraints are one of the best things that you can have when you're trying to come up with something new, because it forces you to get creative like that. And having watched mostly, but also I think I've done one King of the Hill competition myself. They're just a blast just to be in the room, because it's like being at a formal meet, but everybody's involved. Like it's just more engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And the lifters are also the audience kind of simultaneously somehow.
Yep.
So it's just, I thought that was a real neat way of running a community event. And through that, your community just seemed to have exploded to the point like you were in the 240 square foot for a bit. And then you had a bigger garage gym that was what, 400 or 500 square feet?
800 square feet, 880, I believe.
You had like 4 racks in there and a couple deadlift platforms.
Correct.
So that expanded to that. And then how long before you needed an actual commercial space?
Yeah, I think it went 2 years in the first garage. And then it was 1 year in the 880 square foot garage. And then I had to open up Next Level.
How much do you think the competition played a role in the growth and the community aspect of things?
I think it was a huge piece. I think involving your lifters in something greater than just picking stuff up is really important for engagement, and also for focusing their training and allowing them to see the results that they're looking for. As you know, we sort of lead them in the beginning with, hey, look at all this easy weight you get to put on the bar. Like, isn't this awesome? And a couple months or a few months goes by, and then all of a sudden they're like, wait, this got a lot harder all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Yes, it did. There's still a lot of strength you can make. But at that point, it's nice to give your athletes a way to express that strength that they're gaining and maybe give them a little window and a little insight into, look how much stronger you've actually gotten. Though I know it may not be quite as transparent as it used to be in the very beginning.
Do you think competition is helpful in coaching people to think strategically about their training and kind of getting into a concept of being relatively far away from needing to be at peak performance, where you might have a different kind of a training block versus the way that somebody might think when they're just kind of indefinitely training and feels like you're always sort of just grinding away almost without direction?
I mean, I think it puts everything in a context. There's an end point, and in that end point, there's a progression that exists, as opposed to just, am I better today? Am I better this week? It's like, well, actually, I'm going to push this out a little bit further, and I'm going to focus all this training for this period of time that I'm going to be better in 12 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever the prep that you might select for that.
What have you found? This is a bit of a side that we're getting kind of into tactical for maybe the listeners, that regardless of whether they compete with the International Barbell Federation or just competition mechanics in general, do you have a model for preparing for a meet that you find to just be the way to do it, that reliably works pretty much for everybody? Or does each person kind of need their own individualized, super hyper customized solution?
Sure. I would say, first of all, just as a blanket statement, I believe the best program for the person is the one they buy into the most. And that's always going to be true, whether that's meat prep or really anything else. If they believe it's going to work, it's going to work.
Yep.
If they put the hard effort into it. So I have a way that I like to go about it, absolutely, that I prefer to do. And I have worked through years to kind of perfect exactly what I expect to see. And that gives me the confidence as their coach to know that they're on track or not, because I've seen it so many times, right? I have this big sample size and I can watch, well, at this point in time, I expect their lift to be this percentage and to move kind of this fast. And I can compare that against hundreds of other lifts that I've seen from my other athletes at that point in time and be like, okay, yes, they're on track, or no, they're not on track, and maybe we need to make some adjustments. So the program I use, is it the best that there ever was? Probably not. Does it absolutely work and give me, the coach, the information I need to make sure that they're performing at the level I'm expecting them to? Yes, it does. And the brief version, it's essentially the end of it's 4 weeks. There's other training that goes into it, but it's sort of this 4-week taper that establishes thirds, seconds, first attempts.
Would you sort of describe it as sort of a block approach, or do you, like, leading up to that 4 weeks, do you have a systematic way of kind of undulating your intensity and volume, or is it, how would you describe that prep phase? And how far out do you generally start with people?
Yep. It's going to very much depend on their skill level. If I have someone that's relatively new to competing and maybe is more novice or intermediate lifter, like the 4 weeks is probably all that's going to happen. And we're going to spend, we're going to spend the other weeks before that just training like normal. And maybe even, if they're really novice, maybe even just 2 weeks of a final taper, right? Like, I want to get them as strong as possible overall, not necessarily just as strong as possible for this meet. But as the lifter becomes more and more advanced, I find that you need bigger and bigger blocks to actually express that strength that they have, in which case I'll often run it out to about 12 weeks with increasing intensities, sort of decreasing volumes, focus on the main lifts.
Yep.
Lots of heavy singles just for skill practice.
Yep. And I would imagine the further away you are from the competition and less specific, the closer you are, the more specific it gets.
Yep, absolutely.
Do you notice a difference between the lifts in terms of how they respond to tapering?
Oh, 100%.
Like for the squat versus the bench versus deadlift versus the press, what's your approach on tapering?
Yeah, I find the upper body needs the least amount of taper and carries the least amount of fatigue built into it. And honestly, I think responds the least to the taper. Like, you're not going to get massive increases in your bench press in a taper. Where I find that the closer you get to deadlift, so we'll say squat, then deadlift, the more that taper needs to increase and the more explosive the results that you might see.
And how much performance improvement effect would you say Skittles and whiskey are for the deadlift?
I would say huge, right?
Rocket fuel.
Carbs and confidence right there. I mean, for that meet that you're specifically talking about with a video that has way too many plays now, yeah, whiskey and deadlifts was awesome and a way to pull way heavier than I would have that meet.
We do not formally condone the use of performance enhancing. That's funny. Okay, a little bit of an aside into the tactics, but some people might find that useful in preparing for the meet because we're not quite, we're only like 7 weeks out now from the competition. So,
yep, we're getting real close now.
But I would say most people that are, unless, like you said, you're very advanced, that's plenty of time to prepare for a meet and still snag some PRs, certainly for novice and probably even most intermediate and most sort of, what would I say? How would you call them? Your general population lifter who just wants to go out and have a good time and hit some PRs that's not, actively competing on a routine calendar schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's not overemphasize the need for a taper, right? Like we're talking small percentage difference between a really good taper versus just heading into the competition being rested. Like we're talking fine tuning things that matter for the top lifters that are trying to win competitions. For the average person who wants to experience a competition, it's really nice to experience some heavy singles before you start doing that on a big platform.
Yeah.
But it honestly isn't required. Like you're still going to have a great experience. You're probably going to hit some PRs.
Right.
And these kind of things. I would say we don't overemphasize the taper as the most important thing in the world or your competition.
Right. So as you started developing the meets for the gym, you were doing King of the Hill. And then along the way, you took over ownership of the USSF. When was that? 2018, 2019?
I don't remember anymore. Somewhere in that ballpark.
And then that evolved, obviously, with COVID being right in the middle there. Talk a little bit about the transition you went through and I guess most importantly for the context of this conversation, how it became the online competition format that we're kind of modeling with the International Barbell Federation.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I'll start too with real quick that I've run meets for a really long time. I've been exposed to that world for a good length of time. And I really kind of began as the basic, like, let's do spotting and loading and then MC on the mic and running the computers and judging. Eventually, I was a USPA judge as well. And I ran all those pieces kind of before I ever took on a federation or to running a meet. And it was nice to kind of have all those skills in place before trying to take on the whole beast that it can be. USSF, started with really in-person meets like every other competition. And there were some very unique challenges that came into play with COVID, with all of the gyms closing and all of the places that were running our meets also closing.
Especially in the Pacific Northwest where you were at.
Oh, yeah. I want to say we were closed for 13 months out here.
Amazing.
So extreme length of time. The business either had to shut down or had to do something different. And you and I talked at least a few times about, what would an online meet look like? Like, how would that go? Is it possible to put something forward that's fair, that's fun, that's true to competition in an online format? And you and I sort of decided, actually, it might, right? We think it's possible with some challenges, of course, as a different media would present. But we sort of threw it out there with a test run of the Lockdown Smackdown, I believe it was called.
Yeah. The guy in the hazmat suit and deadlifting toilet paper, I think was the logo of the shirt.
Yep, I was wearing that shirt yesterday. Yeah, and so we ran that, and it actually turned out to be super fun. It was fun on my end running it, less stress than an in-person meet for sure. And the feedback we got was really positive, honestly. People found it was kind of fun to compete in their own gym space with their own friends, but also be able to see through, things like Discord channels and things that other people lifting and competing as well. So they were able to get the amount of community that they wanted out of it without being forced into this ultra formal, in-person, very rigid setup. I think, like I said, I think that the feedback was positive and we wanted to continue on that track. And as USSF, we did for a period of time.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the format. I did one of the competitions right in the middle of, I guess it would have been early 2021. The Outlaw was, I remember the code word, and it worked really well. I took advantage of being able to spread it out through the week. I think I did the squat at my home gym, and then I was on the road and did the bench midweek at a gym in the kind of San Diego area. And then I did a deadlift on Friday or Saturday in Costa Mesa. And yeah, I just kind of tried to experiment. I was mostly just trying to see what it was like to spread the lifts out, try to strategize a little bit different than trying to do them all in the same day. I think it worked. I think I got the most out of myself. The bench, I think, kind of bombed, but that might have just been because of travel. Like that underperformed a little bit. But I definitely felt the benefit of squatting one day and then deadlifting at the end of the week. The logistics of recording the plates that I loaded and having the code word. I thought that was a brilliant way of making sure that people weren't cherry picking lifts from, the past. So you had this time released secret word so that only people that knew the word the week of the competition could post the videos and meet the requirements. And then I remember also helping with the judging, that there were a couple close calls where you're like, somebody's tripping up a little bit on the rules, or you can't quite know for sure whether it's depth, and you're kind of having to make some hard calls there. But overall, I thought it was a really slick solution. And I'm stoked to see if we can get that interest going again, because, USSF, you shut it down the end of last year.
Correct.
And it wasn't because the meets weren't going well, right? It was more of just like where you wanted to focus your time.
Yep, that's correct. The meets were going actually quite well, but I have two very, very busy gyms that I operate, as well as working towards opening a third online coaching as well. And then I got a kiddo,
Yeah.
I got a kiddo at 6 and now 7, and I wanted to be very involved in his life. And my gyms needed some attention as well to continue to grow and flourish, and grow and flourish they have.
Yeah. So there's been a little bit of a lull, and now we're trying to help take on a bunch of the administration and marketing and help run these meets and get people competing again. Because I think it's just an awesome way, even though it's not a catalyst for an in-person gym like you were using it, it can be. I mean, actually, that was one of the questions I wanted to have. What do you think are ways that people can get the most out of this format, either as an individual or, what if you've got a gym? We have gym owners that are out there listening to this. Are there ways that you think the individual and or the gym and or just maybe a community of people that are lifting together can take the most advantage out of this?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the beauties of this style is that it's extremely flexible. You can sort of craft the experience that you're looking for, and we'll take care of the judging and the rules and all these things. So for, let's just say, the introverted lifter that just doesn't want to go to a competition, they're good too. They can lift in their garage. They don't want to go lift with anybody else. They can list the music they want to, lift on the stuff they want to, submit their videos, and be done, right? But one of the things I loved about competition was being around like-minded people that were celebrating each other onto probably bigger numbers than we would have achieved without that group, similar to like King of the Hill and how that runs. And so I find that, if you have a group of friends, you have a gym group that you train with, doing it with them and selecting a day or a couple days during the week that you're all going to do your attempts together will get you that fun part of an in-person powerlifting meet where you're celebrating each other, but with a far more select audience. And again, kind of craft that experience that you're looking for. And then similar to, for maybe you're a coach, right? And you're a coach and you have a whole bunch of athletes. Maybe they're all over the place. You're an online coach, right? But you want to give your group of people, your group of athletes, a unified goal to train for. Well, here you go. Here's your option, right? They can all train for this meet, whether they're, in this country, another country, this state, another state, completely different time zones. You can kind of focus them all in on one and then celebrate that together through internet magic.
I was just thinking, as you were describing the ability to craft the experience, you could theoretically run a King of the Hill and record your top lifts as an IBF submission, right?
That's correct. And actually, I used to time some of my King of the Hills around the online competitions, and I'd have plenty of people that would use those lifts. And in fact, I've had people use formal powerlifting competitions and submitted those attempts for the online competition as well.
I guess because you would know, they don't have to like prop the little word up for that one because it actually happened on a specific day.
I still made them do it though. But yeah, I mean, I guess you would know. But no, I still had them put the code word. It's not that hard, right?
Yeah, that's hilarious. So for those that may not be familiar, what is the format and what are the requirements to meet a submission successfully or to submit a lift successfully?
Obviously, it needs to be recorded. We need to be able to see the lifter from head to toe, preferably in kind of contrasting clothing so we can see what's going on. Person recording needs to catch the code word, which is released the night of, just to make sure that, that lift is current. After they do a successful attempt, which is outlined by the rules, as well as there's videos that demonstrate how to do that correctly. The lifter then takes the camera and demonstrates the weights on the bar. So it shows us exactly what weights are on the bar, what bar it is, if it happens to be a non-standard bar, done in one single take. So that way, we have fairness to the competition where it's current, we know what the weight on the bar, and then they've demonstrated it current to the rules. And that video gets uploaded to Lifting Cast via submission portal. And then from there, within 24 hours, it will get viewed by a judge for adherence to the rule set. Given it's a questionable lift, that will be sent off to a panel from there, and the panel will then decide. It's marked good, no good, and the competition carries over about a 2-week period of time, usually, with everything sort of visible at how it's progressing. And in the end, results are tallied based on classes.
What do you find are the things that trip people up most with the rules?
There's certainly quite a few things that will catch people up. And some of them are so unfortunate when I see them happen. So missing the code word, just forgetting to put it in the video, for getting really excited. I just hit a PR and they don't show the plates on the bar.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes there's some equipment that'll come in that's like, it's not allowed. And I can tell you didn't read the rules, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And things like that.
Like a slingshot or something like that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's even more heartbreaking than that. It's like knee sleeves that have buckles on them. Did it help them that much? Not really. But is it cheating? Yeah, kind of. Like, it's definitely more assistance than something else. Like, we tried to minimize all those problems that exist in-person meets, like judges' commands and the variability between equipment. Like, we don't have an equipment list that people have to pay a ton of money to get on to be able to use our equipment in our competition. So we eliminated as much of that as possible to make it as approachable as possible. But you still got to read the rules, and they exist all for a reason, and it's just to make sure that the lift is fair.
How do you do weight classes?
Yeah, so weight classes, that's the trickiest piece. So I'm glad you brought it up. That's the trickiest piece of an online competition. And there's 2 ways you could do it. We chose one way. The way that we selected is a degree of an honor system, where weight classes are quite broad in how big they are. And the person selects the weight class that they are in within that week, or the heaviest weight class for which they weigh in that particular week, via video submission. Like, I can't guess your weight perfectly, but I can tell somewhat if you're within 50 pounds,
sure.
A 50-pound weight class, right?
Yeah.
So if there's something that's obvious, that's off, there is a clause that we can ask for a weigh-in done sort of over live feed in that case. But otherwise, assumed weight class via report. And like I said, there's the other way we could do it. We could run a weight class where people weigh themselves in before the competition. But in the end, could I verify that was true? No. There's 1.5 million ways to cheat that I don't think it makes it any more fair,
right,
the way in which we're doing it, and therefore reduces the complication.
Yeah. And while we do have prizes there, it's not like we have $1 million on the line or something like that. But we do have prizes. If you're out there listening, what am I y'all doing this for? Besides the fact, like we've talked about already, we get to build community. We get to have your training organized around something. Also, you get to put your name in the running for some prizes, which we're still finalizing that list, but it's going to likely be medals. So for those that like to have hardware they can hang on the wall, you'll have that. And then we're also coordinating with Barbell Logic Online Coaching and the Barbell Logic Academy to work on getting some prizes for the various classes, which we'll announce those soon. But right now, we have internationalbarbellfederation.com live, where you can sign up for the meet, IBF's inaugural virtual meet, October 9th through the 20th. And there are both a powerlifting competition, which is squat, bench press, and deadlift, and a strength lifting competition, which is squat, overhead press, and deadlift, that you can register for live now, as well as the official rules for both are posted if you want to go start studying up on those. Oh, and we're working on getting a t-shirt as well with the new International Barbell Federation logo. This might be Well, it's definitely the first print, right? First edition International Barbell Federation. So if you're a collector of meat shirts, this is your chance. And we might not run again. I don't know. So just to put a little scarcity out there. But if you're looking for a way to get focused, this is a great time of year. Kids are back in school. We're getting this in before the holidays where you can really kind of focus in on gearing your training towards a really fun event with a lot of flexibility. So if your coach hasn't told you to sign up, ask them about it, or just sign up and tell them, by the way, coach, I need to PR this week. If you're a coach, shoot this out to your roster and encourage them to sign up. It's a great way to get your clients focused on their training, give them a long-term vision, open up strategic conversations about training. It can be a fun way to engage your clients with new kind of thought process around their training. And if you're out there with an in-person presence or community, highly encourage you to put an event on the calendar, get everybody together, get some Skittles, get some whiskey, if that's your thing, get some loud music, ton of weight, and have some fun. Lift some big weights. What was it that you called competition? Picking up heavy things?
Yeah, picking up heavy things.
All right, Jordan, thank you. Any other closing thoughts?
I'm really excited to see where we can take this with, I think we have a really good team and I'm excited to watch this grow. And I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody's lifts come here in a little over a month. I really enjoy watching everybody's hard work kind of come to fruition. So I get to do the favorite parts of this now, and I get other people do the less favorite parts for me that maybe they enjoy. So thanks for having me on.
Great point. For those wondering, are we just doing this once and that's it? No, the intention here, this is our first attempt to get a meet on the calendar and see how it goes. But the opportunity here that we want to try to take advantage of is growing the competition, growing the community aspect of having meets on a regular basis, and hopefully at some point get another national level kind of in-person event back on the calendar like you did with USSF, and use these as kind of feeder events for getting an in-person event back on the calendar. So stay tuned. There will definitely be more. If we can get this one to show signs of life and growth, then we'll definitely be putting more on the calendar. So thanks again, Jordan, for coming on and sharing your experiences, and looking forward to seeing how this goes in October.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
All right, this has been another episode of the Barbell Logic podcast. Please like, share, subscribe, and come back next week where we'll be talking about Nikki Sims's lifting experience and competition and get a little bit more of her perspective. So bye-bye.